Good morning, good morning. Right. Okay. Welcome to Friday. Yay! The 29th of May. Oh my God, guys, it's so close. June is like, when is June? Oh, Monday. Monday is June. So we are like getting into the 6th month of the year. It's so quick. All right, so we still have the moon in Scorpio this morning. It is in Scorpio until 10:44 p.m. tomorrow night. So that feels like a long way away. Hang on, where the moon is now. All right, the moon is currently at 10 degrees of Scorpio. Okay, no, that feels all right. All right, so did I click that one? Yep. All right, I clicked everything. Beautiful. All right, so I mean, Scorpio moon, we are in the depths of our feelings. We're going to have things like triggers and traumas and, intense experiences. Good morning, DG. Good morning, Christy. Here's my Freya girl. And congratulations for your launch as well. You didn't say anything to me the other day. I would have like fully done the chart for your new launch. We have to connect back up again and have a look at your new business's birth chart. Good morning, Sam. How are you? All right. So overall, I don't actually think it's a bad day. All right. So I mean, we're in the Scorpio moon feels. I know there's a lot of intensity in there. Some people are experiencing this as like Scorpio fucking them around, but other people are just like, how can I get through this? All right. We're in this deep experience. How can I get through it? Sorry, I can hear noises. Not my house. All right, so but the moon is trine Venus. All right, so we've got this lovely feeling this morning. Venus in Cancer, moon in Scorpio. Yes, the feels are intense, but are they a good intense? Are you having a, oh, they do really love me type of experience? Or, like I've said in the words, oh my God, I'm wonderful. I love myself. I love and approve of myself. I love all the things that I do. I love how clever I am. I just love myself because if you don't love yourself, how can you love anyone else? That's a good RuPaul one. I can't say it like he does, but ain't nobody gonna love you like you love yourself. And that wasn't it, but that's my version. Good morning, Susan. How are you? All right, Christy, get me the time that you've clicked buttons or you've done the specific thing. You did the launch. Give me that time. Good morning, Barbara. How are you? Where am I? I'm in Box Hill. No, Gables. Sort of close to you. All right, so the more you back yourself, the easier the outcome. All right, that's because if you can stand up and like I was saying, love what you do, even if things are difficult or they're not as easy the flow as what you would generally like. I think the lessons involved with this one are going to just hit that much harder, or not hit, they're going to flow that much harder or develop that much easier. All right, so gone are the days where you stood silent and shrunk into the shadows. So no matter where you stand today, be heard, know your worth, and don't play small. All right, so you sort of get the feeling. It's like, when I was writing this, I was thinking about all those years that I was too scared or had those awful feelings about myself, so I didn't try. Or when you did try, it was full of shame. Or, you thought you could do something, but then you heard all those negative words. Like, can you sort of get the gist here? It really is like previously where I shrunk back in fear. I am never gonna do that again because I know my worth. All right, so yeah, whilst you are remembering some of the hard times, you are also acknowledging your awesomeness. All right, so there we go. So even if you are in Scorpio's realm, which is deep in those soul fields, your inner light, which you have been stoking for years and years, those beliefs that you were like putting in to your fire of inspiration, every time you didn't listen to other people's criticisms, every time you forged through and achieved something. This is that stoking of the inner fire that will light your way no matter what or where you are. And yes, we all are amazing women. We absolutely are, DG. Okay, so like I said, Moon trine Venus at 10 a.m. Now at 10:30, there is a in conjunct to Saturn, but this is not a bad one, all right? Because this is that forging through. This is that acknowledging the discomfort, so we're looking at that seesaw. We're looking at that differing opinions. Um, oh, I feel like you were looking into my soul, everything I needed to hear this morning. Mwah. Oh my God, Amy, I'm so happy that I can support you in this way. All right. I'm sad to hear that you no, I'm not actually sad to hear that. I like this is where you're supposed to be. All right. So we're all supposed to be in this space where we're we're adjusting, all right. There's an inconjunct to this Saturn in Aries is just making us responsible for ourselves as individual, all right? No one's going to do it for you. No one's going to go and, I mean, look, somebody can go make the money for you, all right? So if you're in a relationship and, example being, the housewife stays to look after the kids, all right? Because traditionally that's what women have always done. Now, in modern times, families can't afford that anymore. They don't have the luxury of having, mothers or fathers staying home to look after the children because, mortgages are rough. The cost of living is crushing us, blah, 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 blah. However, um, here's the adjustment from the traditional ways, Saturn, to um, making meaning in life. Well, yes, today will be better, Amy. Today will be better because, like I said in the words, gone are the days where you stood silent and shrunk into the shadows. All right. So no matter where you stand, be heard, know your worth, and don't play small. Now, I'm absolutely not saying you need to go and yell from the rooftops, but Venus at 10 is saying, I can do this. All right. Venus is in Cancer. I can nurture myself, my inner child, my inner teen, my inner whatever part of your life that you tried to do something and was fearful and resistant and you couldn't, because here you are at this age trying again. All right, so Saturn in Aries is giving us all the discipline and hard work to make ourselves better individuals. Aries, all right, it's giving us the bravery to just be determined to go do the thing. All right, so that's at 10:30. So standing in your power, but then also acknowledging that this is the brace the core. Brace your core and just do it anyway. Find your own balance. Okay. All right. Now after 6, there is a trine to Jupiter. So the evening is going to be lovely, but it is Friday. So we're gonna be home from work then, and we're gonna take our bras off. We're going to sigh in relief. We're going to sit on the lounge and we're going to have a yummy dinner and we maybe have a glass of wine, or maybe we can play with the kids. It's Jupiter. Maybe we can watch a funny movie so that we can reinstate some joy in our soul. Like, what's your favorite movie that gives you the good feels all the time? Plan for that. Like, what is an evening where you can go, this is fun? Like, is your favorite thing pizza? I don't know. Like, what's your favorite takeaway? Maybe you can reward yourself with food. I know we're not dogs, but however, rewarding yourself by not having to cook dinner when you get home is just as good. So, plan for some lightness tonight, a little bit of joy. All right. So, overall, there's actually not that many aspects today. All right, so the other day, sometimes I show you my page and it's just like full. Today's not one of those days, all right? So yes, the moon's in Scorpio, but it's got some nice aspects, all right? So far, I've told you about Venus and Saturn and the moon, all right? So continued hard work towards finding that nourishment and joy. All right, so Sun sextile Saturn, all right? We're just doing the thing, all right? Saturn doesn't need accolades, all right? Saturn's just like, go fucking do the thing, all right? You don't need to voice it from the rooftops. You don't need someone else to acknowledge your power, all right? Like I said, don't stand in the shadows, don't play small. All right, so Mercury is sextile Chiron. All right, so this is where it's our minds that are helping us heal as individuals. All right, it's us doing the work so that Chiron can be activated. So Mercury in Gemini, all right, he's in a good position. He's in his own house. He's thinking rationally and functionally. All right, there's an opportunity and he's taking it. All right, he's looking at Chiron or having a conversation with Chiron, going, "Yeah, I can do this." All right, this feels good. Saturn square, Saturn's, oh my God, Venus square Saturn. All right, so yes, Venus is at home. All right, but let's look at Saturn as, some of those traditional values. All right, we are challenging ourselves. Saturn in Aries, there may be tension. All right, but squats are squares. Good morning, Elizabeth. How are you? Thank you. Yes, squats are squares or squares are squats. All right, so yes, there might be tension, but ultimately it is building our muscles. All right, so we're building, we're developing from resistance. Okay, Mars, not talking to anyone. All right, so Mars, just leave it. You know what? Mars is having a poppy nap on the lounge. Mars is just like, he's been out in the garden. Just leave Mars alone. All right, he's gone through enough lately. We're just like going, yep. All right, Daddy's over there having a sleep. Shh, let's not poke the bear. All right, and then Jupiter square Chiron. All right, so that's that overarching aspect where here we all are together as a group going, oh my God, we can heal as individuals because we do the work, because we understand philosophy, because we look to a higher space for meaning in our lives. All right, and this is beautifully moving on to the full moon in Sagittarius on Sunday. All right, so that is at 9 degrees of Sagittarius. Now, because it's Friday and I'm going to be traveling tomorrow, I won't be doing a weekend report. So if I feel like I can close today down, all right, like I said, just there may be resistance, but that's okay because you are just building a better person. All right, you can absolutely do this. The strong points today are at 10:30. All right, where you love yourself enough to just do the work. Okay, and then after 6, plan for a quiet, relaxing evening doing something that you love. All right, like I said, you get home, you take your bra off, you don't have to cook dinner, you can sit on the lounge with your kids or do whatever brings you joy and relaxation, and that is your evening. All right, so Saturday, 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. All right, Jupiter is also involved. Okay, so tomorrow morning, do something meaningful or fun in the morning. Go for a walk, go do the river walk, or you could do Saturday morning cartoons. I haven't brought that one in for a while. Do something that just zens you out tomorrow morning, because after 11, Uranus opposition starts. All right, so something sudden and unpredictable, or something that requires you to do a little bit of frantic energy, I'm sort of picking up. It goes into its opposition late in the evening, so it's just there all day. It's just an underlying push. Okay, so 2:30 tomorrow. All right, we're watching our words. All right, so I don't know, every time I get to that 3 o'clock mark, I have to remind people that's the hangry hour. So if somebody's getting frustrated around that 3 o'clock mark, give them a snack. All right, or have a conversation, ask them if they're tired. Do you need a nap? There's that tomorrow. Okay, so life's too short. Or so tomorrow, take some time to do something meaningful because life is too short. Enjoy some part of every day. Life will continue to tick by and life's responsibilities will still be there. Make memories while you can because you never know what tomorrow holds. And I don't mean to be macabre, but the moon is still in Scorpio up until 10:44 Saturday evening. All right, so don't take life for granted. All right, again, I'm not saying anything dramatic is going to happen, but Scorpio does remind us that Death is part of life, all right? Endings are part of beginnings, all right? So it is just the way it is. Okay, now, Sunday being the full moon, it isn't until 6:45 p.m. All right. Now there is a little bit more tension around on Sunday. All right. So we've got the opposition to the sun. We've got an inconjunct to Mars at 5 p.m. So the closer we get to that 6:45 mark, the more things are going to be a little bit, all right. I mean, maybe it's Sundayitis, but it is still always a good time to plan your week ahead on Sunday evening or pick a time of your choosing. In my phone, I have my weekly review at 10 a.m. on Sunday, and I just adjust it accordingly. So, it's always just going to get your head into the week ahead. Okay, so on Sunday, we're watching out for clashes in philosophy or differing opinions. Okay, so sometimes it's difficult to understand other people's reasonings, but that doesn't mean that you can disrespect what you don't know. All right, so look at situations as if it was a mirror being held up to show you human nature and how you reflect that in your own life to other people. All right, so because there's that thing where when you get frustrated with other people because it's something about yourself that isn't sitting right. Okay, because otherwise, man, you do you, I'll do me. All right, so if you find something resistant or challenging, then you need to figure out what is it about me that I'm getting irritated about in them. All right, so I mean, look, it is a Sagittarian full moon. It's going to be beautiful. There's always going to be play and adventure. So take time out to play to satisfy the needs of the planets. All right, there's always black and white. There's always two sides. And yes, there can be tense aspects and difficult situations, but you can always find the silver lining in anything. So acknowledging Jupiter's desire for knowledge, awareness, play, and adventure is always another way of just dissipating tense energy. Example being, all right, because there's that inconjunct to Mars just before the full moon, my brain's like, go outside and kick a ball around, all right? Go outside and roughhouse or play or exert that Mars energy, right? Finding balance through exerting your frustration physically rather than verbally, okay? So although Mars is still asleep on Sunday, Mars is still napping on the lounge. So actually Venus and Mars are not talking to anyone on Sunday. I wonder if that reflects in our experience and we're not going to be talking to our significant others. Who knows? But that's just how it is. So that's pretty much right. Going back to that's the weekend done. I'll have to put that in the chat in the notes thing. But yeah, back to today. Back yourself, all right? So no matter what you do in any situation, know your worth. Don't stand there quietly because you fear what's going to happen if you speak up. You are old enough and wise enough with enough experience to be able to use your words. And there is nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. I haven't learnt that yet. I'll look into that. I'll get back to you. All right. So again, you are not omnipotent. All right. You do not know everything. So one of those days where you can just stand up, be heard, and know your worth. How does that feel, guys? How does that feel? I mean, look, today feels lovely. And like I said, tomorrow, just take time to play or do something that satisfies your soul. Sagittarius, it's all ninth house, learning, religion, philosophy, adventure. Go do things that make memories for a meaningful existence. And with that, I'm going to go. And thank you, Elizabeth. I will keep an eye out for you. Mwah.